Hello everyone, welcome to Awakening Dialogues. I hope you guys are doing well. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Wherever you are in this world, I hope you guys are doing well. Today we have Navid Desai from IIT Gandhinagar. Today we are going to talk on innovation and growth.
Thank you. Thank you, Harsh. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, Navid, me and viewers are excited to learn about you because, when IIT comes in the mind, people have students and many people have a dream to go in IIT and IIMs. So, I would like to know. I and viewers are very excited to know about yourself. If you can give us a short introduction about yourself, it will be a great insight for us.
Sure, happy to. I am a program executive at the writing studio at IIT Gandhinagar. I don't have an engineering background, classically speaking. I got a training in literature. I have a master's degree in English literature and languages. But my writing profile expands across different subjects and themes. So at IIT Gandhinagar, what I do is I teach creative and critical thinking and academic, technical, and creative writing to bachelor's, master's, and PhD students. And I make sure that their thinking processes and their understanding of their subject is refined through the tools of language and writing. So it is a profile. It is a professional profile that lets me interact with people from across different disciplines. I primarily teach all the courses essentially that are there at IIT Gandhinagar because writing is a common thread across all of them. So, be it compulsory papers that I teach, be it in course interventions that I take, or be it one on one consultation that I do with the students, I get the opportunity of talking to people from across all disciplines and areas and walks of life. And that is something which is quite rewarding for an academic, that I get to talk to people who are invested in different pockets of curiosity, if I may put it that way, right? So that's what nourishes my profile at IIT Gandhinagar in a way, that I get to be in contact with uh, some of the best knowledge that we have to offer as a knowledge society, and I get to absorb a lot of it and learn from it as well.
Amazing introduction, Navid, and I'm really thankful for this amazing introduction. This introduction will help us and viewers to gain insights from IIT Gandhinagar from expert like you. So, Navid, my first question arises over here is that how is IIT Gandhinagar related to innovation and growth?
Correct. So, IIT Gandhinagar as an institution, from what I have come to understand, is pioneering the practice of interdisciplinarity in academics. Right. Since IITs have now grown to be centers for excellence, where the education being given at IITs is not limited only to engineering, but we have programs in, for example, pure sciences, right? Physics, chemistry, biology, biological engineering, and we also have programs in cognitive and brain sciences. We also have programs in humanities, right? And we have PhD programs ranging from economics to pure sciences to engineering and anthropology and things like that. So this is in a way a marketplace of ideas where uh, no one thinker is siloed into their space or is pigeonholed into their space, saying, no, this is my area, I'm only going to work on this one area, right? We get to interact and see what impact does our knowledge bank, so to say, have on somebody else's knowledge bank, right? So that crossbreeding of idea is something which I'm quite excited by. I get to see academics working together in domains which don't classically exist, right? But they create those intersections so that their research, their both of their combined research, can have a maximized impact. So that kind of innovation is something that I think is at the core of this entire idea of interdisciplinarity, right? That we don't restrict ourselves to our disciplines. That I don't say that I am a humanities scholar, therefore I will not talk to somebody from technology. Somebody from pure sciences does not say that, oh, physics is a higher degree of thinking than engineering, so I won't talk to them, right? These kinds of siloed thinking is what stops innovation in a way. It hinders innovation, right? But instead, what happens here is they collaborate, right? This is more of a collaborative process of building knowledge, of seeing where knowledge can be applied. So I think that for me is quite inspiring. That I think is the bedrock on which good innovation takes place at an institute like IIT Gandhinagar. And in fact, this is not limited to IIT Gandhinagar. Let me say this very clearly, that it doesn't take an IIT necessarily to foster this culture of interdisciplinarity, right? This can be practiced. This is, in fact, I've been very fortunate to observe this at universities, state and private universities, and central universities as well. I've been fortunate to observe this across the board, right? Academia as a field, as a sector in general, is waking up to this idea of interdisciplinarity, and I'm grateful to be a part of it at the moment.
Amazing insights on this, Nivid. I really appreciate your answer. So, Nivid, my next question is that can you describe a time when you had to, think outside the box to overcome a challenge at IIT Gandhinagar or in your professional life or in your career? Let's take an example that, TEDx event itself. It's an outside of the box, like it's not a normal event. It requires a lot of efforts, hard work, time, collaboration, coordination, each and everything from multiple peoples. So how you know face your problems at IIT Gandhinagar and how you overcome it?
Okay, so first of all, let me preface this by saying that in terms of my scope of career, uh, I've been very fortunate to say this. By the way, I'll say this with a sense of privilege and acknowledgement that I have not had to see challenges as being a negative factor, right? Challenges have in fact facilitated my growth intellectually or professionally. So at IIT Gandhinagar, the biggest challenge that I face, and I'll say this in a positive way, okay? So this is a challenge which is not necessarily something that hinders me, but it is something that challenges me, as the word suggests. So the biggest challenge that I face is that I don't belong to the engineering field, as classically as I've mentioned in my introduction, right? So I have had to learn the basics of not of engineering as a subject, but more importantly, the thinking patterns of engineers, right? I come from a humanities training. I come from a training of critical thinking, of theory, of philosophy, of literature, right? Narratives. All of that is a different genre of thinking, if I may put it that way. While engineers and scientists, they think uh, it's not that their ideas are radically different, right? But their approach to the ideas may be different, right? Their priorities while approaching an idea might be different, right? While I'll give you an example. While we as humanities students, when I was a student, I was taught to problematize things, right? Or of getting to the root of any statement that I'm making, and making sure that the principles of that statement are absolutely clearly laid out before we even take the first step towards discussing the statement, right? While the engineers, when I started interacting with my students, what I found out was that they care about solving the problem statement first, right? So they care about the application, they care about the approach, they care about what the solution of this problem statement is, right? So it's, in a way, it is a complementary relationship where I am trained in problematizing and they are trained in problem solving, right? So it's a challenge to bring both of these worlds together. That is my biggest, see, if I see my overarching theme of a career so far, one of my most favorite challenges to tackle, right? This is something that I love doing. One of my most favorite challenges to tackle is to grapple with the fact that I am not from the same background as my students, right? But it brings about a plethora of conversations. I'm absolutely there for it, right? Because when we disagree or when we notice that our thinking patterns are different, it sparks some really interesting conversations. Why did you think this way? Why did you not think this way, right? Why do I think in a certain way? All of these kinds of different conversations, they bring about a deeper sense of intentionality in our thinking. So I think that is something that I'm really pri- privileged to have, right? That kind of a challenge is something which fuels growth in my, since we're talking about ideas and their growth, in my understanding, in my ideas, the growth which has been fueled is by this sense of discrepancy between me not being 100% there and them trying to bridge that gap, right? So I think that that's a constant iterative process of learning for me as well.
100% agree with, can't deny on this, and I'm really thankful for providing a great insight on this topic. So I would like to also add one thing, that this type of skills I had seen when I visited IIT Gandhinagar campus for one day event at TEDx IIT Gandhinagar. Students from multiple department came together and guided us throughout the event, that where is the the lunch area, where is the TEDx room, and they guided us throughout the event from morning till evening. They were having the same level of energy. So my next question is that how is your experience at IIT shaped your approach to innovation and problem solving?
Okay, that's a very interesting question because it allows me to continue on from what I was saying in the previous question, right? Uh, like I said, there is a gap between my students and me, and I'm very grateful for that gap, right? If we were agreeing 100% on everything that we were talking about, then there would be no scope for discussion. But if I can take that a step forward, when they start their journey of BTech, they have grown up in a system that teaches them to think objectively, right? That helps them prioritize the solutions of problems. When they come to my class in the first year of their BTech, what we start learning together is to think subjectively, is to start appreciating the nuance of each problem, is to start appreciating what they themselves think about any problem that they are targeting, right? Because it's not about the methodology of solving the problem as much as the approach to that problem. Because the methodology can be streamlined, right? But one's approach to the problem, how does one justify the approach to the problem, requires a greater deal of clarity. So through writing, through discussions, through exercises and assignments, what we end up doing is we end up refining this thinking process together, right? So that's step one. When they start being more intentional about the kind of thoughts that they are having, about the kinds of responses that they are having to problems and challenges in their life, they end up becoming more intentional towards their approach to engineering, right? I'll give you an example. We have recently begun a major in AI, in artificial intelligence, right? Among the first institutes in the country to introduce something like that. So this is a BTech in AI course. It is not a CS major. It's an AI major, right? So this is a first of its kind program with its first batch running at the moment, right? Uh, what these people are trying to grapple with, the students who have signed up for an AI major, is that this is a blossoming field. New changes, new upheavals are happening day after day, right? Something will happen to Sam Altman at OpenAI, and it'll cause a whole new wave of change in their field. So what we end up discussing is what kind of a philosophical outlook to AI should you have? What kind of an ethical outlook to AI should you have? Right? So as to not only be an engineer that ends up coding their way into AI, but they also end up becoming a thought leader, for lack of a better word, right? They end up becoming a thought leader. This person has a clear understanding of the purpose of AI, of the applications of AI, and more importantly, the utility of this thing that they are developing. Whatever it is that they end up developing in artificial intelligence, the utility should be justified, right? So these kinds of thinking processes is what we break down on a daily basis, so that it becomes iterative, it becomes something that they grow over time, right? Over the 4 years of their BTech, they end up having a more refined outlook towards the field that they are practicing in. Okay, so that ends up becoming an entire perspective that they develop. So it is not only about writing an email, or writing a letter, or writing an application or a patent application or anything of that sort. It is more refined, it is more ingrained. It's more about developing a temperament, right? So it's more about being intentional about their thinking. Now when they go forward and they start participating in these boot camps and these hackathons and these different kinds of competitions where they have to pitch their idea for a startup, or they have to develop a product and pitch it to investors, or they have coursework later on in their BTech where they have to develop a product and innovate something and develop a business out of it. We end up justifying the narrative of the business using the exact same tools, right? The exact same tools of storytelling, the exact same tools of persuasion that they've learned in their first year ends up becoming useful in their second and the third and the fourth years when they end up becoming budding entrepreneurs or budding product managers or budding technology professionals, right? So the same temperament that they developed in their first year ends up fueling their thinking process across their entire program. So that's this innovation which is sustainable. It is not something which happens right here right now and then stops. Okay, it's not a one time only thing. It is a long drawn out process, and frankly I don't see it happening in any other way, right? It is not something which can happen once and stops. It is something which one has to foster for a lifetime. I remember talking to our founding director, Professor Sudhir Jain, who is now the Vice Chancellor of Banaras Hindu University. And he said something very interesting. He said, "We are not preparing our students for their first job, we are preparing them for their last job." Right? So it's not about giving them only the skills which will get them campus placement. Of course, that's the paramount importance. But it is also about developing their personalities. It is about developing their thinking patterns. It is about developing their leadership styles, which will end up fueling an entire career's worth of work, right? That they'll become independent thinkers, that they'll become leaders unto themselves, and they'll become innovators in future.
A great insight, Nuved, over here. And I liked your quote personally over here is that we are not preparing students for their first job. We are preparing students for their last job. That's a quote that, I like to very much. And when you say last job, of course, when you say last job of the person, it means that they have seen lots of corporate career, they have seen lots of, personal things in their life. So how you ensure that people who are the part of the IITs and IIM they learn throughout their career? It means that a one line question arises over here is that what strategies do you ensure that people who are the part of the IIT Gandhinagar they learn and grow continues throughout their career?
Uh, First of all, Harsh, I think we must draw a very clear difference between studying and learning, right? Uh, Padhna or seekhna, like we say, right? Uh, we may have had this confused, I'm afraid. Uh, our establishment has taught us that learning as we know is through textbooks. That is our primary medium of learning. That's how we prepare for exams. That's how we qualify for higher education, for jobs, and so on and so forth. But we are not taught that studying is a part of learning, right? It is our introduction. Let me scratch that. It is not even our introduction to learning. We learn much before we start studying, right? We learn an entire language before we even step into a school, right? So learning is something which is incredibly innate to the human condition, right? We have evolved as being adaptable creatures. If we were not adaptable, we would have been wiped out of the face of the earth, right? So we have learned to adapt to our environment. We have learned to grow a civilization. We have learned to grow languages. We have learned to stay together and develop a culture, right? All of these are acts of grasping knowledge, imbibing knowledge, and applying knowledge that are not limited to just institutionalized studying. Okay. So, what one prioritizes is graduating from being a student to being a learner. Okay. And then letting their role of being a student be a part of their learning journey. Okay. So, the learning part is not limited to their student years, it is not limited to their college years. Okay, so we end up justifying the application of each thing that they are learning, not only in practical terms but also in the terms of developing their perspective, like I've mentioned previously. So that ends up making sense to the students, that if I am curious about this one thing that I'm learning in the class, It is because it is going to end up uh, contributing something to my growth. Okay, they may see it in that very moment, they may see it 30 years from now, that's okay, but they are aware, they are conscious of the fact that it is going to contribute something to my pool of knowledge, to my understanding, to my perspective about the world, and to my growth in the longer run. Right? It is about playing the long game of learning. So that's a curiosity driven approach to learning that I think an institution like the one where I work at is something which we prioritize. Right? In fact, we have a whole setup. We have a curiosity lab at IIT Gandhinagar, right? Which researches how curiosity can be sparked, how curiosity can be retained, how curiosity can be materialized in order to learn better, right? So we have two very interesting setups. Uh, we have a curiosity lab and we have a center for creative learning. Okay, both of these CL and CCL are very interesting setups because they investigate something which is not inherently tangible, right? Curiosity को आप quantify नहीं कर सकते, right? That's what we think, but if you notice curiosity, it ends up becoming a lifelong driving force. So if you start optimizing your curriculum, if you start optimizing your syllabus, all of that around the curiosity of the students, it ends up assuring it by itself that the students will not lose their interest, that the students will not feel like this is being imposed upon us. We try our best to do that. Right? Now, coming to the point about how we can retain learning or how we can retain this habit of learning. So first of all, like I said, we must differentiate between being a student and being a learner. Being a student is a phase of your life, being a learner is a condition in your life, right? It is something which you adapt and you carry on for a lifetime. uh, Something which in fact I learned from my students is you have to understand the role of asymmetrical learning in your life. Right? Asymmetrical learning is essentially everything that happens in a non-structured way. Okay, learning as such, if you think about it, doesn't have a structure to it. When we put a structure to it, it becomes a curriculum. When we put a structure to it, it becomes a syllabus, it becomes a classroom, it becomes a lecture. Right? But learning at its spirit has no structure. Right? You may learn. Think about it this way, Harsh. Where do we learn bargaining? We don't learn bargaining, but we are so brilliant at it. Right? We are masters at bargaining. Right? But it is not taught to us. Negotiation is not taught to us. But bargaining is something which we have as a lifestyle of sorts. Right? So it is not structured. It is not something which can be put into curriculum. So we must recognize how many things we are picking up in an asymmetrical way. If you're watching a YouTube video, for example, or if you're watching a web series, it is we have classically been trained to think that all of these are wastage of time. You must stick to one textbook and learn and make notes and give exams and stuff like that. But if you're watching a YouTube video, if you've picked up something from it, that is also learning, that is also contributing to your overall bank of knowledge. All that we need to do is be intentionally recognizing that and then using that knowledge whenever the time comes for it. Okay. You may have picked up a certain phrase. I am a student of language, right? I've studied languages. I've observed the uses of language across media. That's what I do. So if I pick up a certain phrase from, let's say, a web series, and if I use it in a daily life, I don't need to go consult Renan Martin. Renan Martin is somewhere around there, but I don't need to consult it to check whether this is the correct phrase or not. If it is spoken in a certain way, if I've used it correctly, that's learning. End of story. Right? So I think we as conscious thinkers, recognizing all the different areas in which we pick up learning, will in itself do the job. Right? It is not like we have to go out looking for a mental model and start applying it to our daily life in order to accelerate learning. That's that's not needed. It's not necessary. It's good if you do that, but it's not necessary. I don't want to put the pressure of that on anyone. Just be intentional and acknowledge the fact that you are picking up 20 different things when you step out of your house. Okay, and it is recognizing and it is registering something in your brain to your already existing pool of knowledge, right? And that asymmetry of learning will end up creating this entire universe of knowledge, an entire, what I like to call in my research, the narrative of knowledge, right? I use that phrase very often in my papers, the narrative of knowledge. It ends up constructing a narrative of knowledge in your own head. That okay, I picked this one thing up from this one show, I picked this one thing up from this one song, and that is how I have connected all these two or three different things in my mind. And it's a joy to discover all of these things in yourself, right? That I picked this one thing up from this one song that I heard. I know this one word because I heard this one TED talk. I know this one concept because I read this one book. And if all of those things start talking to each other in your head, that is what ensures that you keep learning for a lifetime. Because it's an endless chase, right? There is no end to it because it will only keep growing exponentially. And you won't even need to sit down and recognize and start taking notes and revising every now and then. Okay, mujhe itna pata hai, right? These are the 50 things that I know. It doesn't work that way. It is an organic process of growth. I'm sorry, I'm taking a long time to no, long-winded answer to your question. I am a lecturer at the end of the day. This is what I do, but I'm really sorry for that. But I hope that answers your question about learning.
100% your time is worth for us, and your explanation skills help us to expand our knowledge. To be very honest, before 5 minutes I was having a different mindset on learning and education, and after listening to your TEDx talks I have a different mindset now, right? So no, my next question arises over here is that you have a lot of educational background, you have a good library over here, over there as well in your background, and I saw your LinkedIn, you have a great educational career. So my question is that are there any three books that you would like to recommend us, that these are the the three books that each and every person who is the part of the IIT or who are not the part of the IIT Gandhinagar, they must read this type of books to go ahead in their career.
Okay. So I understand this need for a list based recommendation, but I can say that my understanding of innovation, my understanding of growing ideas, it has not come from one specific monolith of a book. Okay, so what I can recommend is a series of books that can serve as a nice starting point for anybody who wants to learn anything. Okay, and that series of books is called, and this is something which I think is probably available in most of the college libraries, because it is something that a lot of academic institutions often subscribe to. That series of books is called A Very Short Introduction. Okay, a very short introduction to, and then you can fill in the blank. Okay, so a very short introduction to mechanical engineering, a very short introduction to artificial intelligence, a very short introduction to biology, right? Oxford University Press has published this series. It's called A Very Short Introduction. What happens in this book is there's like a 50-60 page book. Okay, and it is written by the world renowned authorities on those subjects. So if let's pick up artificial intelligence, okay? So Oxford University Press has written a very short, sorry, it has published a very short introduction to artificial intelligence. It will be written by the world-renowned expert on artificial intelligence. Okay. Now, what this book does is it gives you an overview of this entire area that you've picked up for, and it starts suggesting you books to read if you want to dive deeper. Okay, so I see these little guidebooks as being ready references to dive deeper into any field that catches your attention. Okay, and I think since, like I said, in my experience, there has been no one sure short way of building an understanding of innovation through one book and one book only. I think it'll do all our listeners and all our friends, it'll do them better if they first expand the scope of their reading and then recognize what are the points at which their curiosity peaks. Okay. And then they go deeper, right? Reading is both about breadth and depth, right? You read broadly, and then you recognize what are the points at which you think you can dedicate a lot more time and effort into learning more about this one thing in a deeper, more nuanced sense, and you then dive deeper into it, right? So that's my blanket recommendation every time we talk about growing ideas or learning new things. A very short introduction by Oxford University Press. You'll be able to find their entire catalog online, or at your local library, or at the library of your college or university. Contact your librarian, ask them about a very short introduction by Oxford University Press, and it will help you learn a lot of things about any field that you are interested in, right? And if that field is not fulfilled by a very short introduction series, rest assured that it will come in a very near future, because they keep updating that catalog, right? A very short introduction as a series is very frequently updated. So rest assured that this is something which is it's a dynamic series of books, and it has helped me understand a lot of fields at a go, right? Like I mentioned, that I have to talk to my students in a language which is native to them, right? In a language, in an understanding, in an approach to thinking which is native to them. So a very short introduction has actually helped me understand a lot of nuances about different kinds of disciplines and different kinds of sciences, particularly since I don't belong to that as an academic. I don't belong to those disciplines as an academic. It has actually helped me get a working understanding of those disciplines at a glance, right? So that's my recommendation. A very short introduction series by Oxford University Press.
Amazing answer, Navid, and I'm really thankful for this insights. And I know that this Oxford things, like now they are also updating on regular basis on the science and technology sites as science and technology side as well. So thankful for providing an insight over here. So Navid, my last question arises over here is that are there any suggestions and growth tips that we should follow, or the people who are seeing this video they must follow to go ahead in their career?
Okay, my first and foremost recommendation to mat lo, request le lo, right? This is more of a request. Please don't let your curiosity die. Okay, that's your one thing which can end up, like I said, empowering an entire lifetime's worth of learning, right? If you're curious about something, please be intentional in following it through. Please learn what you are curious about. It could be a language, it could be a skill, it could be about a theory, it could be about how two things in the world are connected to each other. Whatever it is that you're curious about, that you want to learn, it's a calling. It's a passion to keep fulfilling that for a lifetime's worth of learning. Please don't let it die. My second recommendation would be to be as broad in your thinking as possible, right? Deep though we are trained to be, attain a certain kind of depth in our thinking, but also whatever depth that you achieve, don't let it sit in a vacuum. Okay. uh, Make it talk, make ideas talk in your head, right? Make ideas fight in your head, for all I care, right? And that will end up ensuring that you and your bank of knowledge about one particular thing doesn't stay limited to that one subject or that one area, right? You start seeing the impact of your skills, of your knowledge, of your entire approach to learning, to and the way that it impacts different kinds of areas and sectors. You start seeing patterns that emerge. Okay. For example, uh, I was just talking to a couple of students before our semester ended, that I'm now fascinated by systems thinking, right? This is an approach to thinking about systems. Language is a system, for example. Uh, a coding language is a system, just like a human language is a system, right? So I'm incredibly fascinated by how people come up with systems. So since I am recognizing systems as a part of my next step of learning, what I need to do is 25 years, for these 25 years, what kind of systems have I already learned? I first need to recognize that. I first need to look back. I first need to retrospect on the kinds of things that I've learned and contextualize that information, contextualize that knowledge, right? That is what ends up making my thoughts clear about what I grasp next. Okay, so first, stay curious. Second, think in terms of breadth, right? How does your pool of knowledge connect with the kinds of conversations that are uh, going around? And third is, don't don't be hostile to new ideas, right? Because sooner or later it happens. I have seen this happening in my own self. I have seen this happening in my closest friends, and my colleagues. What ends up happening is that if you have grown up, picking up one belief or one idea or one understanding of a subject, and it ends up becoming your credo for life, it's very difficult to challenge that. Okay. uh, so what ends up happening is you automatically become hostile to any new idea which is coming through. uh, Sometimes rightfully so, sometimes there are contentions to that, but I would still firmly believe that being hostile to ideas is a net negative thing, right? It doesn't render you as many results as being open to ideas and to discussions as would do, right? So be open to ideas, have discussions, have conversations, be civil about those conversations, be kind about those conversations, right? uh, Approach those conversations with curiosity of learning, and then if you disagree, you disagree. That's okay. You don't have to uh, agree about everything in the world. There doesn't have to be a 100% alignment between two people's perspectives in this world. That's okay. But if those divergences emerge, if those differences emerge, explore those differences, right? See where they are coming from. See what they say about yourself as a thinker, about your companion as a thinker, right? Because all of these are different niches of learning. At the end of the day, my my selfish motive is that it ends up fueling your learning, right? Again, I apologize for a long-winded answer, but those are the few things that I wanted to touch upon when you asked this.
Thanks, Nivel, for this and amazing insight on this topic. And I want to, thank you on behalf of viewers as well who are, watching us, and they are really happy after this, seeing this type of tips and techniques. And insider, I can say from IIT Gandhinagar, I really appreciate the time, Nivel, and have a great day ahead. Thank you.